resting in the peace of meditation, let us reflect upon the practice of samyama. Samyama being the threefold practice of dharana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and superconsciousness, samadhi, full cognitive absorption or oneness consciousness. This threefold practice is what we do together every time we meditate. We begin with the first 5 limbs of the eightfold practice, and then together we move into samyama. Often, a large portion of the practice can be dharana, our efforts to concentrate, attempting to keep our focus on the breath, or at the spiritual eye, or listening within, and constantly returning our attention when we become distracted. Focused, distracted, focused, distracted. And this can continue until at some point our focus remains steady for a time. Sometimes we become aware of that and the mind shifts back into dharana. We become distracted. Then we focus again. Sometimes able to maintain that focus for meditation. And if we can remain in that uninterrupted flow of attention for long enough, we can enter into superconsciousness, where we begin to lose that sense of separate self and enter into just pure being existence. Samadhi. This is the practice of samyama. As we close our time of practicing samyama, let us offer this peaceful consciousness to our world, sending loving kindness to all people everywhere without exception. And offering this peace into our day ahead of us, knowing that it underpins all of our actions, infuses our thoughts and our speech, and is the true nature of our own self. Let's seal this time of meditation with chanting Om together, one time, sending a healing vibration to all points in the universe. Peace. May our thoughts be aligned with Dharma. May our speech be aligned with Dharma. May our heart and our actions be aligned with Dharma. And so it is. Om. Peace. Amen. Welcome to our study. I absolutely know the truth of what Roy Eugene Davis always says, which is everything that is needed for us to understand the processes of consciousness and the nature of matter and the universe is within us. And if we purify the mental field, we can know anything and everything. I believe it. I've seen it in action, and I think you have too in your own way, seen how when you are practicing deeply, daily, and give yourself over to it, you have come into a relationship with knowledge and wisdom that is very different than before you began purifying the mental field. Yes? There are things that you no longer struggle with that may have seemed thick before or hard to access. You may be able to move through emotional stressors that were once harder to move through. One thing that we're coming to know is the self more fully, which makes life easier on all fronts. So, let's dive in. Roy Eugene Davis's Science of Self-Realization, because that is the go-to book to make it plain and simple. So this is your Bible. And Baba Haridas or Swami Satchidananda or whatever companion books you have are more information. Now, I don't believe that these other books are necessary to understand these concepts or to practice these concepts. What I am encouraging is that we have the traditional backstory to all of this, that we have the deep teachings from the original sources, because it's all about consciousness. It's not really academic study, although it can feel like that when we're trying to read through this stuff, but it's studies in consciousness. And the information that is in the other texts is additional information, but it is very key to add to your consciousness so that when you are in the esoteric, when you're meditating, these things will arise and you will have a better understanding. Sitting and reading the book is one thing. Practicing and experiencing is another. Yes? All right. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you will go ahead and continue to use the other books as well and not be bogged down in needing to memorize or fully understand on first read. And that is another thing that Roy Eugene Davis always says, is just read and know that your spirit will give you further information. So let's begin. Chapter 3 in The Science of Self-Realization on Exceptional Powers of Perception and Extraordinary Abilities. Roy Eugene Davis. Sutra 1. An unwavering flow of attention is concentration. Concentration does not require extreme effort. Direct your attention to what you want to know or with which you want to be identified. So I'm going to ask you to reflect upon your practice of samyama. which we have been calling our meditation practice, which it is. And the first stage, dharana, is attempting to focus. Yes? Now here it says an unwavering flow of attention is concentration. That's when you achieve it. The practice is continually focusing our attention on a single point or a set of techniques, right? And returning our attention again and again to what we want to be focused upon. Often in Roy's commentary and translations, and in the others, there is a reference to what you want to know, right? When you're focusing your attention and you're practicing samyama or you're concentrating, there's often a statement that says, focused upon what you want to know, right? Now, do you feel that that's a little like hard to understand when you look at the way that you're practicing? Do you think that that's easy when they say what you want to know? What do you think what you want to know is? So what I'd like to say about that is ultimately what we're seeking to know is the self beyond distracted thinking, the self beyond ordinary mind. And that's ultimately what we're seeking to know. And yes, in any given moment, we may be looking at a particular bit of knowledge that we want to have insight into, something we want to have insight into. Sometimes it's, I just want to know why I can't focus. But truly, the ultimate goal, and why, and I believe in the largest sense, the self is what we're seeking to know. So let's move to Sutra 2. Unwavering concentration on the object chosen for contemplation is meditation. These two sound the same, don't they? If concentration wavers, focus it by gentle attention, or use a meditation technique to more fully involve your attention. That's what we do. When sitting to meditate, remember why you were doing it, and proceed with purposeful intention. It can be helpful to start with prayer to God, as you know or imagine God to be, to invoke God's help and elicit a sense of awareness of God. So for those of us who relate to God in that way, it is helpful as inspiration, and for many it deepens the intimacy of your meditation. It turns you further within when you have that point of contact, even, that heart contact. If concentration wavers, focus it by gentle attention. So, 1 and 2, Sutra 1 and 2 in Roy's book seem to be just first attempting to focus or setting yourself up to focus, and then the action of returning and returning and returning. I always say it's like a constant course correction. So I want you to start to get a vision of this. Often it's been used as a teaching phrase that meditation and the flow of meditation is like the spaces between train cars, like when a train is passing, like you're sitting and looking at a train passing, and the train is passing and you see the space between the cars, right? When it's going really fast, you really don't see the space between the cars, you just see a blur, right? But when you are more deeply focused, the space goes away and it's just a flow. Or you can look at it as a flow. One is a flow of water when it's dripping, 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 and that's us trying to focus, focus, focus. When we are fully focused, it's like oil, and there's no, it's just one stream, unbroken. Here's where it starts to get deeper. In Sutra 3, the self-shining of the object of meditative contemplation is samadhi. What do you think about that? So let me read Roy's commentary on that sutra about self-shining of the object of meditative contemplation. What is realized during meditation is said to be self-shining, revealed or experienced as it is. There is no awareness of observing anything, only the knowing experience of what was contemplated is present. This is like similar to the aha moment, when something just psh, and you just know it, you know? You had that experience recently. Yeah, where you, sometimes it's something that you've carried for a while and haven't been able to penetrate with your mind.
Right.
And then you enter, and you may not even know you're entering into the space of consciousness, but you enter into an open space of consciousness, just an openness. And bam, the answer comes, or the realization comes. You may not realize that your consciousness was in a different mode at the time. Sometimes, you know, most of the time it happens when? Maybe when you're in the shower. You know, people have ahas in the shower. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's the interaction of relaxation and aloneness in the water that makes you just, you know, shift consciousness. I'm not sure why that happens. Sometimes it's in the early morning hours when you're just laying in the bed and you haven't started your day yet, but you're awake and your mind is in a certain state. This is why people meditate in the morning too, where it's uncluttered, it's unfettered, you're not really worried about the day, and things just come that you may have been working on forever, right? Or when you're in nature and you're walking on the beach, and yeah, that's one place where it might happen. So that is part of what self-shining is, or when things are just revealed to mind in a certain state of being. And you will see that the answer was there because you didn't go anywhere to get it. No one gave it to you, right? You just had to enter into a state of consciousness for it to arise. That is that little bit of understanding that you can have about, one, self-shining knowledge, two, what Roy Eugene Davis says about everything you need to understand everything in the cosmos is within you. Think about the scientific field where people have an idea, like think about Einstein, have an idea about how something that he never saw in his lifetime, an idea about how some aspect of the cosmos works, because, you know, he contemplated it. He had, yes, more information than, you know, maybe I have about physics, astrophysics, and, you know, cosmology, and mathematics, but he didn't have a way at the time of actually proving a lot of things. And now they have been proven through observation and having the instruments And then Sutra 4, concentration, meditation, and samadhi together result in mastery of attention and complete identification of attention and awareness with the object contemplated. Now, object means simply the thing that we are concentrating upon. So breath is an object. Spiritual eye is an object. Inner sound is an object. If you are using something outside of you, like a candle flame or a mandala, those are objects that you focus your attention upon. Right? So don't let that word bother you. It bothered me for a while. I was like, object? Identification of attention and awareness with an object, light, sound, or any other chosen object, or pure self-knowledge, may continue until subliminal influences again become active and cause thoughts and feelings to arise. Samadhi of pure self-knowledge may prevail when thoughts and emotions are present during meditation and at other times. So, samadhi of pure self-knowledge may prevail when thoughts and emotions are present during meditation and at other times. So, I think one of the reasons why Sri Davis makes sure that he mentions that is because there are yoga masters who are in that oneness consciousness or that absorption at all times and can interact in the world. So interacting in the world requires that we have thought processes going, because if you were just in samadhi all the time and you didn't have thoughts or weren't interacting with others, you would just be sitting absorbed in contemplation, samadhi. So it is possible to remain in that high state of consciousness and still interact in the world. It is rare. That is what the awakened masters are capable of doing. And he, Sri Davis, witnessed that by being a devotee of Yogananda, because Yogananda was capable of that, being active and still completely in samadhi. It's a different way of being in samadhi, but it is still samadhi. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to say about it. But another thing is this samadhi, super consciousness or hyper consciousness as it is called, is while it is the pinnacle of our experience, our meditative experience, that's, where we're going, which is oneness consciousness. It is said that we lose the sense of the person meditating. We no longer feel I am meditating. We are simply in a state of non-thinking, boundless, expansive being. And I think that it is not something that is out of reach for any one of us. We can certainly experience that. And yes, it takes lots of practice through the other two stages to be able to hold our attention long enough for it to happen. But that is the goal. And beyond that, there are different states of samadhi. So there's samadhi. The very initial stage is the stage where, like Roy Eugene Davis was explaining, where we are there for a brief moment and then not so much, and then we touch in again. The reason is because we still have subtle awareness of self, subtle awareness of the one who's meditating, subtle awareness of mental processes. We haven't yet gone beyond that. So it's subtly there, but you can touch in and be in samadhi where you're like, oh, where did I go? But as soon as you notice you're in it, you're out of it. This is why they talk about liberation of consciousness. It's liberated from ordinary states of being, liberated from distracted mental states, liberated from identification with body and mind, that boundless feeling where you're like, I don't even feel like I have a body. Yeah? So now you have some understanding. And then there's different levels of it where you're beyond identifying with the mental process that brought you there. And we'll talk about those eventually. Those are part of this, but... and there were some brief teachings in the Sutras in Chapter 1 about the states of samadhi. So at some point you may go back to all of that, but don't fill your mind with all of that now, because this chapter is going to be enough. And then you'll, once we get through this book, you will have a resource that you can dive into at any time and feel connected to the sutras when you read them. I know that since you read 1 and 2, you have a connection with those. You have, I wouldn't say, that we completely understand them and can recite them, but you have a connection with them through your practice and through contemplating them, and now you're beginning to have a connection with these. So, was it useful to actually reflect upon the practice of samyama after meditation? Did it help you to understand that you have been doing these things? And reading them in the book is one thing, and actually practicing them is another. So this samyama is your meditation practice. So as you read on, know that the explanations and details that are further, that take you further into this study are your future as you practice more deeply. And I definitely join Roy Eugene Davis in saying that these teachings are experiences of human beings just like us that were taken down and offered as encouragement for all of us to practice deeply so that we can become fully realized human spiritual beings. So the amount of effort we apply and intention that we make will determine how far we go. That's it for me. So I open the floor for you sharing about your experiences of study or anything more that you want to say if you haven't already shared it.